Welcome back. Have you ever wondered, do I actually like being a mom? Or am I doing this right because I don't love all the aspects of this motherhood phase? Well, I have the girl for you to help reassure you that you are an amazing mother. I have Hannah here today, and she is here to remind us that motherhood is all about the relationships, not the tasks that have to get done. Hannah is a mother of 6 young kids, and she has made it her mission to help other mothers redefine what motherhood looks like and what it really means. Motherhood is not a job. Motherhood is building relationships with our kids, others, and family. I am so excited to share this episode with you. Welcome to Grow Wild. I'm your host, Kaylee, and I'm excited to spotlight moms in all phases of life and build community in our own experiences. Let's grow together in this wild journey of motherhood. I am really excited for this interview. I have Hannah here with me. When I first saw Hannah's message, I was like, oh my goodness, I finally feel seen. I feel like someone understands my phase of motherhood I'm in. And I feel like you just put into words all these thoughts that I've been having. So I immediately was like, I need to reach out to her because I need to get her to share this to so many other women.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you. I'm happy to be on and chatting about motherhood and all the things.
Yeah, I think it's so great. So I wanted to start in the beginning. So I wanted to rewind the clock for you. And I just want to know, what was the transition like in becoming a mom for you?
So I would say that it really was when I first found out I was pregnant that it kind of came to the forefront because I always knew that I wanted to have a family, that I wanted to have kids, like that was always part of my plan. But once I found out I was pregnant, and it wasn't like this moment of like, okay, we're ready to start our family, like let's start having kids, I hadn't gotten there yet. But we thankfully, I was in a good situation. I was in a really stable, happy marriage. We'd been married for a few years, like ideal from the outside it looked like ideal timing, but it just I hadn't really like made that brain decision flip whatever yet. And so when I found out I was pregnant, I it was actually really hard because even though I wanted to be a mom and I always imagined being a mom, I very much felt like my life was over to some degree as far as the way that I knew it and my identity and the way that I spent my time, my dreams, kind of all of that was no longer on the table for me. And so if I had to describe it, I would honestly say that I grieved like most of that pregnancy because I wasn't super excited about all of those things ending and feeling like my time had come of like putting aside my quote unquote selfish desires and just like putting everything towards my family. And I think, that obviously wasn't a pleasant experience, but because my expectations were so low for what that transition would be like, it actually ended up being more enjoyable than I anticipated, which was lucky for me. I think for a lot of women, it's kind of the opposite because they've, this is something they've been dreaming and like looking forward to for a long time. And so then the reality is that it's actually less pleasant. But I think because I was in such a dark place leading up to it, I was actually like, oh, yeah, this is really hard and I don't like a lot of the things I'm doing, but I do understand the appeal. Whereas when I was pregnant, I didn't really understand, if that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. And I really appreciate that you say that because I felt like when we had decided to have kids, it was like we decided we were going to start trying and whatever. But I felt that grieving moment as well. Like, okay, I'm closing this chapter of I can do whatever I want with my life. And now I'm going to have to devote it to this little human who I don't know. And it was just like, I have to start all over again. And I don't know who I'm going to be. So I appreciate you saying that because I think that a lot of women have that as well. but are sometimes scared to admit that, or at least that's what I have found in talking with other women.
Yeah, I it is interesting because I think at least it felt like to me most of my peers they were just so excited that it was like I didn't sense that from them. Um and so, and especially knowing how prevalent infertility is and knowing how many people want to have kids so badly and aren't able to on the timeline or at all, in the way that they wanted, it can be a really tender topic because obviously it's a lucky thing, right? Like it's a lucky thing that I got to be pregnant and have this child and grow my family. And at the same time, and so because of that, it can be really hard to express that maybe disappointment or fear or dread or grief. But I think that there's it's all valid, like everyone's experience is very personal, and it's not to say that one is harder than the other, right? Like it's all just every situation can present its own challenges.
And I love that you say that because I think that that is a lesson I'm learning in being a mom now is that every mother's experience and what they're going through is unique and it's going to be personal no matter what. But I think being able to have empathy in those situations and recognize the blessings that we do have, I think that goes a long way. And just recognizing other people's struggles as well and know that we're all going to be in it together. So, like, let's support each other in whatever phase we're going through, or at least that's what I try to think of.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I wanted to also ask you, where do you think the idea of being a mom, because you said you kind of went into this like grieving stage, which I think a lot of women do have, and where you do think like your life is ending when you have kids, which is kind of sad because I feel like there was a stigma around, okay, you're becoming a mom, say goodbye to your old self, she's gone. And I was wondering where do you think that idea came from? And you've talked about like I now had a mom bun, I now had a mom car. Like where do you think that all originated from?
That's a great question. And I don't know that I can pinpoint it for everyone, but I know for me, growing up as a very religious person, as a Christian, I think there is a lot of messaging that I received around motherhood and specifically around motherhood and the concept of selflessness and sacrifice. And so that was internal. I internalized that, right? I believe that in order to be a good mom, the mom that God wanted me to be, I needed to essentially put aside all of the parts of myself to serve selflessly others, like my children, my family. And so I think for me, that's where a lot of it stemmed from was this idea that good moms were selfless and you can't be selfless and also pursuing things for yourself, right? Like that, there was just this very clear distinction in my mind of okay, like now that I am here, now that I have taken on this new role or identity or whatever, that comes with this level of sacrifice. And it's like, it's a sanctification process, right? Like I believe that that was as hard as it was, I believe that it was the holy choice. It was the thing that was going to make me the most like God, right? Because I heard things like motherhood is next to godliness, or I don't know exact phrases, but just like that concept of ranking motherhood near godhood kind of. And so it was like, yeah, it makes sense that this has to be this hard because that is the point of it. And so even though I wasn't excited about it and I was dreading it, I was like, well, that's just how it is, like that's part of God's plan for me and in building who I am ultimately meant to be.
And I appreciate what you've said with that because when I've talked to my mom about being a mom, and she has 6 children, I'm the oldest of her 6, and she has talked about like she completely did not know who she was. Like she had devoted everything. She was so selfless with all of us kids. And I think she's an amazing mom. Like, I think I had the best mom growing up. But I've reiterated before, like, I don't want to be like her, though, in certain aspects because she completely didn't have like her own identity as well. And that's something she's discovering now. So that's something that I've thought about now is I'm like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm taking time for myself. And I think that all good things are also really hard too. Like, I think the reason why we have hard times is so that we can really feel the joy. And I think that's what God also wanted us to feel as well, is to know that really amazing joyous feeling is because it's also really hard as well.
Yeah, and to go off on that, I agree. At the same time, I think sometimes we focus so much on the hard and like the hard
Mhm.
being so important. And but that's not what I we learn from the scriptures, right? Like we learn that men are that they might have joy. And so
Mhm.
yeah, there are going to be hard elements to that, but the point isn't for it to be hard to be hard. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
back to what I believed before with this concept of like, okay, well, yeah, it's gonna be hard and I'm not gonna like it, but like, oh well, just gotta grin and bear it because that's what I'm supposed to be doing and that's what God wants for me. Ultimately, discovered for myself that that was not necessarily true, that that wasn't necessarily God's will for me. And in the realization that I had, which maybe you're getting to this later, but was this concept that I was considering all of the tasks that I did that filled my day that were hard, right? The sleepless nights, the being alone with children, the managing the tantrums, the changing the diapers, the monotony of just like kind of this groundhog day of the same thing over and over again with my babies and toddlers. I attributed all of that to motherhood and I believed all of it was motherhood. And the realization that I finally came to was that essentially those things were work and that work has a name and that work is called caregiving, and motherhood was actually separate from that, and it was the relationship that I was building with my kids, and I could use that work to build the relationship with my kids. But what I ultimately discovered was that I was being such a workaholic to the work, right? I was being so absorbed in the work that my capacity for the relationships I had with my kids was actually quite low. And so the connection I had with them was very shallow because the connection I had with myself was very shallow. And ultimately, I had to be okay with working less so that I could reconnect with myself and then deepen those relationships with my husband and my kids. And ultimately, I believe more fully be more fully present in motherhood rather than in caregiving.
I love it. And this was what I was like, ah, finally someone is saying what I have been thinking about for so long. And I just didn't know how to like put it into words. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I don't love it all the time. And I don't love
Right.
doing all these things all the time. And I was thinking all the time, like, am I just a bad mom? Am I just a bad mom because I don't love doing laundry? I don't love wiping diapers. I don't love not sleeping at night. Like all these things, I thought I'm just not a good mom. And then I saw your message and I thought, wow, finally someone is saying what I think a lot of women need to hear. So before we dive deeper into it, I wanted to know, when did you have this like language shift and aha moment where you discovered the two words? Because I know a lot of women listening are going to think, oh, I don't agree with that. Or what do you mean by motherhood isn't doing all these things? Like that's what I've been told my whole life and for generations. So when did you have that shift in your life with that relationship with motherhood?
Back to when I found out I was pregnant. Something that I heard, and I think, you know how they say you find what you look for, right? I was already pretty grumpy about being pregnant, and I was not really looking forward to my whole life turning upside down. And it seemed like the phrase that I heard repeatedly throughout that pregnancy was motherhood is hard. motherhood is hard. Has anybody prepared you for how hard motherhood is going to be? You know, people meaning well, right? Very well meaning people who I think went into motherhood with these rose colored glasses, thinking it was going to be so great and so fulfilling and so wonderful, then face the reality of, oh, being alone with a newborn for 8, 9 hours a day while my husband is away is really hard, right?
Yes.
And so they meant really well in kind of prepping me, but it got to the point where I was asking Steven, my husband, I'm like, why do people even have kids? Like, it seems like everybody hates it. All they ever say is how hard it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so fast forward, my daughter's born, and I realized, like, okay, yeah, I am doing a lot of hard things. I agree. But are these things motherhood? And so from the beginning, from literally day one, I just had this question of like, what is motherhood though? Because yeah, being up in the night is hard, and yeah, being alone with her during the day is hard, but like, is that motherhood? Because like someone else could change her diaper and that doesn't make them her mom, or someone else could help her in the night even, right? My mom came and stayed with us for a few weeks and she kind of took on the night shift, and that
Mm-hmm.
didn't make my mom her mom. And so I had that question from the beginning, and I tested out over the years like different ways of phrasing it. Like I actually wrote a blog post at one time where I was like, motherhood is love. And that was kind of the explanation I had. Like, it's a type of love that women have, but that didn't quite measure up all the time, because like sometimes it's more or less, or like, you're still gonna get frustrated. And so fast forward now to 2020. I've just had my fourth baby, and my oldest is 4. So we just went for it and had a bunch of kids really quick. And up until that point, I feel like I'd been able to manage maintaining my own identity and having things outside of caregiving. I didn't obviously frame it that way, but I still was able to kind of hold on to a lot of what I felt like was myself, right? But once we had our fourth kid and we're in the middle of a pandemic and everything is just turned on its head, I am for the first time feeling completely in over my head. Like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what day it is. Like, it is just, we're in it. Okay. And so on this one particular day, Stephen was working from home, which was a blessing and a trial because he was on calls all day with people outside of his company. And it was like client calls. And so I'm trying to keep 4 kids quiet in the house. We can't go anywhere. Nowhere's open. The parks are literally caution taped off. And he's on calls, and we have a newborn, and it was very stressful. So he comes out of our bedroom, which was his office, right? Because we did not have any setup for this. And he was like, I think you need to go on a drive and just like have some alone time. And so I did. I went on a drive. I couldn't go anywhere, right? Everywhere was closed, but I just went into the mountains in the canyon near our house and got out at a campsite, had my little journal, and I just started journaling and kind of pouring out my heart to God and being like, okay, I get that motherhood has to be hard, but why does it have to be this hard? Like, why, where's the joy? Like, where is, and not to say that I didn't ever not love my kids. Like, I always did. I never regretted anything to do with them, but it was just like, why does it have to be so consuming to me and my identity and all the things that I want and I dream for, kind of thing. And I just had these very clear words popped in my head, and it was just, Hannah, motherhood isn't a job, it's a relationship. And for me, that just those words in and of itself was like basically a light switch flipped in my mind, because this whole time I had been equating motherhood with the job of caring for children. That was just how I'd always thought of it. And it was like my worth as a mom was based on how much I did for my kids, like the amount that I served them, the things that I did for them, the amount of time I spent with them, right? But immediately when I heard this reframe of motherhood as a relationship, I was like, whoa, I am using the wrong metrics. Because, yeah, I'm with my kids all day, every day, literally, because we are in the middle of a pandemic and I cannot leave. But my relationship with them is the weakest it's ever been. And that led me to then realize, like, okay, why is that? It's because my connection to myself is the weakest it's ever been. And in order to have a deeper relationship with them, I need to get a deeper relationship with myself so that I have that capacity to then expand that relationship with them. And the thing that made such a difference for me was that up until that point, motherhood had felt very constrictive. Like it was kind of this thing that was holding me back in a way, I guess. Like it was this thing that had forced all of this change in my life and whatever. But immediately, once I thought of it as a relationship, it became expansive. And it was like, oh, the point of this was to expand me, to help me learn more about myself and to enrich my life, not to become something that is stunting my growth.
I just love everything that you have said. And I feel like I could visually see like weight being lifted off of people's shoulders, off of like mom's shoulders hearing this, because when you think about all the tasks of being a caregiver, changing the diapers, doing the laundry, cooking, drop offs, school, homework, all these things that like pile onto us every single day. And if you just remove that and you can think about, oh, I just have to build a relationship with my kid, that's still hard. That is still like a
Right.
task we have to do. And you have to work at that. It's
And
not
it's
like,
still
oh,
work. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like you immediately have a relationship with your kid now. Like that takes time and effort. But if you remove all the other stuff that we pile on, I feel like that makes it so much easier to focus on that relationship with your child, with yourself, with your spouse, which goes so underrated with everything. I used to equate to, okay, what can I do in these tasks to show my love for my family? That shouldn't be what these tasks are doing. They're kind of, these things have to get done every single day. It doesn't have to be building my relationship with my family in that process. So I just love it. I think that it's such a freeing epiphany and like realization that you had.
I think so too. It is interesting though, because as I have shared this message and talked with hundreds, maybe even thousands of women about this message, like you mentioned before, it is something that a lot of people resist. And that has surprised me because for me, it was such a freeing concept that it was like, wait, no, like this isn't a bad thing, right? Like this is a good thing. But so as I've thought about it, I think it's because it can feel kind of threatening to the concept of motherhood, especially when like I've never been very on top of the household or the chores or the things. And so for me, it was like, oh, weight is lifted, like hallelujah. It doesn't determine my relationship with my kids. But for women who are good at those things, it's like they take a lot of value from that. And I am not here to tell you that like there's anything wrong with that. Like it's really great. I am so impressed by people who are able to smoothly run a household. And I just want to offer that you don't have to do anything differently. Like the beauty of the message does not mean that you need to go out and build a company or write a book or do there's no obligation to do any more than what you're currently doing. The freedom for me was simply a mindset shift, because even now, like, I am still the primary caregiver of my kids, but I think about it in such a different way than I did before, because now I see it as something that I'm choosing, because it makes the most sense for our family, because of the advantages, because of the flexibility, right? Like there are all these pros. Whereas before, it was something I was doing out of obligation because I thought it was a requirement of me to be a good mom. So don't feel like you have to go shake up everything in your life just because you have this realization. Like, that is the beauty. Everything can stay exactly as it is, and you can just take freedom in knowing that this is a choice that you're actively making.
Well, and I love that you say that because I was thinking about this whole concept the other day when I had a long list of things to do. And I was like, I just am a bad mom. I just don't want to do any of this. I do it all the time. I'm just over it. And then I remember, okay, this is my job. And some people don't feel like doing their job every single day. And that's me today. I just don't feel like doing my job. But we're going to have a really fun day. And I'm going to just ignore all that stuff. And I'm going to work on relationships with my kids today. And I think for me, because I think I resonate with you a little bit on like, for me, just from the things that I've seen, like I consider myself a very like type B mom. Like my house is not clean. My laundry is in bins all over the place. I feel like
Speaking my language.
I just was like, she sees me. She sees me as a mom. So I just felt like, okay, I can still not love my job every single day, but I can still love it. And it does make sense for our family, but I can love the relationships that I am building with my kids. So for me, it really resonated with me. And I love that you also said you don't have to go and change the world. For me, it was like I can take a deep breath and kind of relax and be like, okay, it's all right that I don't love this all the time. So I really loved it. But speaking to the women that might necessarily be like, whoa, pump the brakes. What is she even talking about? Because you once said your role as a mother is not dependent on the laundry you get done, the meals you make, the people you hire, or even if you're a working mom, that doesn't make you less of a mom if you don't if you're not there all the time or if you do hire out or all these things. So what would you say to a mom that maybe struggles with this concept but then also still struggling in her role as a mother as well?
I'm going to pivot here. Well, I'm going to go back to what you were saying before, and hopefully it will come around. So, this is another thing that was so helpful to me because before it was like, when I asked myself this question of, do I like being a mom? It was like, well, I'm thinking through, I'm cataloging how the day went, right? I'm like, well, so and so blew out in their diaper, and then they had an accident at the library, and then, like thinking through the things the day went. Or it's like, oh, yeah, we went to this fun place. Oh, but then so and so cried the whole way home. And it was like I was tallying up like the good times and the bad times to determine whether or not I enjoyed being a mom that day, right? And realizing that motherhood is relationship allowed me to take like a huge step back, because the reality is some days on the job, some days of caregiving really suck, right? But I didn't have to make those a reflection of how I felt about motherhood, because I could see from this bird's eye view, motherhood is the relationship that I'm building today, tomorrow, in 10 years, in 20 years, and in 50 years. Like, it is so much bigger than this job that I'm currently in. And so it gave me the space to be like, okay, today didn't love my job. That's okay. I still love motherhood. I still love being a mom because I love this ride that we're on together, right? Like, I love this relationship that we're building that is going far beyond this day, this week, this age of this child. And I think that can be really helpful because it's going to ebb and flow, right? Like, some ages of some kids you're going to love, and it's going to be so easy to get along with them, and you're going to feel really connected. And then maybe another age phase of another child is like, ooh, we're clashing a lot right now, right? But as long as we have that bigger picture and that's what we're focusing on, and we don't get so caught up on these like little things, it can be really helpful to see that you don't have to love the job to love being a mom. So back to your question. It is normal to feel that way because our messaging around motherhood, our beliefs around motherhood started from the time we were literally toddlers, right? Because even things like when you see a little 3-year-old holding her baby sister or holding her baby doll, people are like, oh, you're such a good mom, right? They'll say that to a 3-year-old. And the reality is, that's not being a mom. That's being a caregiver, right? That 3-year-old does not have the relationship of motherhood, but they are learning attributes of good caregiving. And so it's very normal to have these concepts intertwined because that is the way that our language is. That is the way we talk about motherhood. That is the way that we have had motherhood explained to us for decades. So if this concept is not something that clicks with you right away, that is okay. But if you are willing to sit with it for a little bit, I am hopeful that it really could help, and it could it being able, it is possible, I guess is what I'm saying. It is possible to detangle those things. So one quick thing that you can try is when you think about a task, you can ask yourself, if a robot did this, would I still be a mom? Right? Like we're in 2025. The world of robots is not that far away, right? I mean, essentially dishwashers, washing machines, they're a form of a robot, okay? So it's like when you're sitting there folding your laundry, you could ask yourself, like, could a robot do this? Because if so, it's not motherhood. Now, if you're folding your laundry and you're making a game of it with your kids and you're making this like a bonding experience for you, great. Yeah, that could be motherhood because you're building that relationship. But that doesn't have to be. Like if you hate laundry and you hired a laundry service, essentially that could be posed as a robot, right? Is that going to make it so you cannot have a strong relationship with your kids today, tomorrow, or in 10 years? Of course not. Because the laundry is, sure, you can do it and you can like, you know, fill every fold with love and do whatever you want. But like, that's not crucial for the relationship because you can find other ways to feed that relationship. Did that answer the question?
Oh, yes. And I think for me, I would have to change the scenario because I hate folding laundry. So to me, I'm like, no, it doesn't make me less of a mom because I hate it already. So I just laugh at that because for me, I remember when we first had our first, I remember folding his little clothes and I thought, why in the world am I folding these? Like when I go rummaging through to see what he's going to wear anyways, I'm messing it all up. So now it's just tossed in a bin and is in his room or on the floor in my room. So that's where we're at.
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm a big proponent of no fold laundry systems, so I'm a big fan. Sorry,
Yeah,
keep going.
it is game changing. I remember my cousin actually told me, she's like, "Why do you fold your kids' clothes? Like, don't. It's going to get messed up anyways." And I thought, "Wow, that is amazing. Like the little things that just change, I think it's great." So then going off of this, so now you have a mom who's like, "Okay, I can take this weight off my shoulders, and now I have to work on this relationship." What would you say to a mom that's like, okay, wait, how do I even build a relationship? Because I thought all these meals that I was making, that was building the relationship with my kid. Now that you've stripped that away, what is the relationship with my kids and where do I even start?
This is such a hard question for me to answer, which is so funny, but because it is I think we overcomplicate it. You know what I mean? Like we have been navigating relationships our whole lives, and yet because this concept of motherhood being a relationship is so new, it's like people don't, they like forget what a relationship is, you know? And I don't mean to say that in like a condescending way. But I think you can give yourself more credit than you think, right? Because if you're sitting here panicked, like, okay, how do I build a relationship? Think about it for a second. Like, how did you build a relationship with your husband? How did you build a relationship with your siblings? How do you right now build a relationship with your parents, even though you don't live with them, right? So, or maybe you do, but it's in a different capacity than the caregiving type of situation. So I think a lot of things that, because you are going to use, okay, sorry. This is how I like to think about it. When you're building a house, you're going to use tools to build the house. But the tools do not become the house. They are not the house. No matter how much you use them, they're not the house. So now we're going to relate that to this concept of caregiving and motherhood. Caregiving is built up of so many tools that you can use to build the relationship that you have with your kids. So maybe one of the tools you use is driving carpool. Maybe one of the tools you use is eating dinner together. Maybe one of the tools you use is bath time. Okay. These are all tools and you can use them and you're going to use them to build the relationship because that is when we connect, right? But the problem comes when we start focusing so much on the tools that we forget what we're building. And we get so worried about using every single tool every single day and being, the hoarder of all the tools that we again lose sight of what we're building. So yes, you're going to use the caregiving aspects, you're going to use whichever ones you enjoy to build that relationship, but you don't have to use at different phases of the building process, you're going to use different tools. So rather than getting so attached to the tool itself, remember the purpose that of what you're building and the vision of what you're building.
That is amazing. I think I saw like a visual in my head the whole time of like this house and all the tools. And I think that's so great. I think it's something all women need to hear just because it totally is freeing. Because was thinking as you're talking, I thought, okay, what are things that I'm trying to do my everyday? So my thing that I love is I love cooking and baking. Like I really enjoy doing that. And I remember women and people like anyone saying, "Oh, but wait till you have to do that with a kid. Like it gets really challenging." And I remember thinking, "Well, I love this, so why wouldn't I want to show my kids my love for this?" And I've started incorporating my son into like helping me cook or helping me bake. And it's so fun. Is it an absolute mess? Is my kitchen covered in flour after? Yes. But I'm hoping that these are memories that he'll have, that he'll be like, oh, I remember doing this with mom and it was really fun. And she didn't freak out on me when flour spilt on the floor, or when I cracked an egg and it went all over the place. But he'll remember I had a lot of fun cooking and baking with my mom. So those are little things that I'm try to incorporate. Like you said, use those tools. I think that is an amazing analogy.
Touch on what you said too, as far as like that emotional regulation piece. Okay. Of like when things don't go according to plan, how are we reacting? Because to me, that has become my metric, right? Before, my metric of how good of a mom I was like, how much am I doing? How many hours am I spending this? How clean is my house? How good was dinner? How, it was all of these task things, right? And now I try to, instead of using that as my metric for like how I'm doing as a mom, my metric is how is my ability to maintain a space of safety regardless of what is going on around me. So like if, somebody is falling off the counter, or like, like when chaos is happening, which I have 6 kids under 10, so like chaos is always happening. um my ability to maintain a space of safety, like kids are going to get hurt, obviously I try to protect them and keep them safe as much as I am able, but more important than that, controlling them and their environment, is checking in with my nervous system and making sure that I can not lash out, not react, not get like angry. Obviously, I'm not perfect at it, right? I'm human. That does happen. So when that does, I'm like, whoa, okay, that was not how I want to handle the situation. I go back to my kid, I apologize, we move forward. That is my new metric of the connection and relationship that I have with my kids. Because ultimately for me, and maybe you'll find it slightly different for you, and that's fine. I'm not saying this needs to be it for everybody, but for me, my core value is belonging. And I always want my kids to feel like they belong in my presence. And so if I am acting in a way that does not communicate that, then that is a um like a sign to me that something is off in my person that I need to get addressed so that I can get back to being that safe space of belonging.
I think that's perfect. I think that totally encompasses building a relationship with your child. And I know that everyone's is going to be a little bit different on what they how they measure it obviously, but I think that kind of sums up what we want to be as moms, or I think a lot of us really want to be that safe place for our children. I think of my mom growing up. She was a saint of a woman. I asked her the other day, I said, "Did you ever freak out on us?" Because I like really don't remember. Kind of hoping that she was going to say, "Oh, yeah, you don't remember this time." She honestly was like, "No, I never did because I thought this isn't going to solve any problems and it's not going to make you feel better." And I thought, "Oh,
Wow.
okay." Like, I need to take some lessons on how to be a little more calm because I think in that day I had freaked out at something that had happened. Um, but her outlook was just kind of like what you're saying. I always wanted to be a safe, she always wanted to be a safe place for us kids to come to and to know that we could talk to her and we still can do that. That was one of the aspects I think she was really, really great at building a relationship with us children. Um, but it's going to be totally different. And I am not saying that if you freak out at your kids, because I have done that, that makes you a bad mom because I'm right there. I'm learning those lessons as well.
Yes, 100%. And I think the important step though, because we're all human. Like, I mean, I guess other than your mom, right? She's like next level. We're all going to have those moments where we're like completely dysregulated. We're gonna take it out on our kids. We're gonna yell. We're gonna say something like so ridiculous that we are like, why was I even thinking that? And so then it's like, okay, where do we go from here, right? We repair. That is modeling healthy relationships, right? It's going to our kids, asking for forgiveness. Something I love to do is tell them what I want to do differently next time. Like, hey, when this happened and I said that, I am so sorry. I absolutely wish I hadn't said that. Next time, I want to say it like this, or like this is how I want to handle that situation. Just so like they can understand and I can understand like what the proper way to handle that situation is. Um and when I notice that I am being more reactive, like, because it occasionally it's gonna happen, right? Like it's gonna happen. But if there's a day where I am like every little thing is setting me off, that's when it shows like a red flag to me of, okay, what need of my own is not being met here that is causing such a strong reaction repeatedly today, right? And so then it's like, oh, I haven't eaten in 6 hours. Okay, that might be why. Or like, oh, I didn't sleep last night because I'm an idiot and I was up watching some stupid show, or whatever it is that I can then understand where this is coming from so that I can solve that need within myself and not like expect someone else to magically solve it for me, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And I think it's great that you brought in modeling for your kids, like modeling what you want the action to be. I actually didn't know this, but in preparing for the interview, I was looking at some of your stuff and I didn't realize that you were a teacher. I was also a teacher before kids. And in the classroom, kids best learn by modeling. If we're modeling behaviors, if we're modeling things that we want them to learn, they pick up on it way easier rather than just like a lecture of what we want them to learn. So I think I've taken that into my parenting of, okay, how do I want to model behaviors or things that I want my kids to see me doing that they're like, "Oh, mom's doing that. I want to try doing that." And I think that that also helps like you said, repair or build that relationship that we're constantly aiming for.
Yeah, I've heard people will say like it's called parenting because it's about the parents' behavior. It's not called childrening or whatever. So it's just kind of emphasizing that concept of like the more I get into this parenting thing, the more I realize it's about me, not my kids. And it's a lot easier to fixate on them and their behaviors and recognize all the things that they're doing wrong rather than looking internally and realizing, oh, I've got some things to work on too. And again, I think that's where the relationship aspect comes in, right? Like if the relationship that I want for my kids with my kids is not one of me nitpicking every single thing they do and picking them apart and making them feel self-conscious, it is me improving myself so that I can be the best relationship partner with them with whatever they're dealing with in their life, so that I can be that steady, safe presence for them that is modeling how I want their life to go. And I can't do that without being very intentional about where my life is going.
Amazing. And kind of shifting gears onto this topic, what do you think, or why do you think that it's important for our kids to see us as parents, as moms, taking the time to build relationships with ourselves, like working on ourselves personally?
Yeah, I think that's very in line with that modeling that we just talked about, right? Because that is ultimately what it is. Like, if I want them to be working on self improvement, if I want them to be going after big goals or dreams or just growing and getting to the growth potential that they have, then it's really important that I show them what that looks like. And especially, I have one daughter and five sons. And so I think naturally, that will become more of a challenge for my daughter. Hopefully, right? She'll have internalized some different messaging around motherhood than I did. But I think it's especially hard for her. And, my sons too, if and when they get married, to be able to understand how important that is for their partners to have that time and space to really connect with themselves, because it truly, I mean, you can get to a point where you are you take it to one extreme where it's like you connect so deeply with yourself that you almost become disconnected with the people around you, right? Like if you need to go on, is that like the premise of Eat Pray Love kind of? I don't really I don't know. But where they're just like, I am just going to go on this self-discovery trip and leave, like not talk to my family for a year so I can learn who I am. And obviously we don't need to take it to the extreme, but I do think there is something to be said about connecting with ourselves, because I think that that is ultimately what will allow us to have deeper connection with our family. But I think there's ways to do it that don't involve you having to go, you know,
Remove yourself
miles,
fully from
thousands
your
of miles.
family.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what are the types of things that you are doing? Because I think that this is a hot topic and one that a lot of moms struggle with and parents struggle with is what is maybe one thing that you are doing right now to work on a relationship with yourself to model that for your kids?
A lot of things I feel like creativity is by far the biggest outlet for me to feel connected with myself, but that can show up in a thousand different ways. And for me, it does. So, like, one way I love creativity is making bread. I love to make bread. The process of taking raw ingredients and then turning them into this beautiful loaf is a creative endeavor that I find very connecting. Other things, like I love creating content on Instagram. I love creating connections with other women, especially like women's networking events are super fun for me. The idea of creating a business and like talking about all of the aspects of building that with other women, I think is super fun. So there are lots of ways that that plays out, but for me, creativity, I would say, is the biggest factor.
I love that. I think that it is a great example to other parents, just not being afraid to pursue things that you love, that will be wholesome, great things that will show your kids, look, mom is doing this and she really loves that. And she's pursuing something that's not me. Like, I have some friends that they'll say their parents like have no idea what they're doing and they still like need to parent their adult children because they just don't even know what to do right now. And I think that that's kind of a generational thing that have found that our generation of moms are really trying to hone in. Like, I want to make sure I'm taking the time to care about myself because no matter what transitions happen within parenting, and one day our kids are going to be gone and be adults. And I know that that transition will be hard when it gets there, but what are ways that I can help my future self just be able to be excited about that phase rather than being like, I don't know what to do with my life anymore?
Yeah, I completely agree.
So, my last question for you is, in this wild journey of motherhood, how have you grown as a woman?
Oh wow. I love that question. It's interesting. I've been working today. I'm submitting an article for a potential publication thing. I don't know if it'll be submitted, but I've been working on it all day. So it's kind of, this is relevant to what I've been thinking about, because I think for me, the biggest growth that I experienced was in really, rather than like following this prescribed path of like what I thought it meant to be a good mom and just doing all the things because that's what I believed was expected of me, and actually looking inside myself and taking it to God and saying like, what is actually my path, rather just than just assuming that it was one thing. Really reclaiming that decision and reclaiming my identity, I guess, of like being someone who has agency and can make decisions based on what is best for me. I think taking that power back was very was a really big thing for me, because like I said too, my life really isn't all that different than it was before, but the way that I feel about my decisions now is coming from an entirely different place than it was previously. And just like having that authority over my own life. This article I'm writing is about sovereignty. That's not a word I use usually, but that sovereignty is, I would say, the most growth that I've experienced.
I think that's awesome. I love that you're like reclaiming your power. I think it's awesome, and just one that I hope that, and I think a lot of moms are going to find inspiring. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for chatting about this with me.
I want to say a huge thank you to Hannah for being here with me and taking the time to have this conversation. Her message really helped me out with just having a little more grace and patience in this motherhood phase that I'm in. I hope others are able to find peace as well. And once again, thank you to all of you who continue to show up and listen and share this experience with me. It really has been a ton of fun, and I'm grateful that all of you love to listen. Be sure to subscribe if you do love it, because it really does help me out. I love you all, and I will see you next time.